You're listening to the Practically Pastoring Podcast, where we want to help pastors and church leaders share ideas, become better shepherds and leaders, and have a good time with friends.
Welcome to the Practically Pastoring Podcast. My name is Frank, and I am glad to be with you. I am here with my buddy up in Baltimore, Maryland. We got Jeffrey Simpson.
Hey.
Delmar is unavailable this week again, but he is on to some important stuff down in Sumter, South Carolina. But together in the Morning After Ministry Studios, we got Andrew Larson.
Greetings and salutations.
And Timothy Miller.
Hello, world.
I just want to say you said that again very passively aggressively at Delmar's expense, and that's not nice.
He's still like doing real ministry work.
Actual ministry work. Frank's just a little upset, that's all.
So
he just misses him. He misses
He does.
Here's the thing. Tim and I have already recorded one podcast together today, so now I feel like it's safe to admit that I purposely have the low end turned down on Tim's mix.
You do.
Can you?
Why do you do that?
I just want to make myself sound a little bit manlier. Is that bad?
I was wondering why Tim's mic sounded so much better.
Oh, does it really sound good?
It sounds great.
No,
So I need to.
Thank you, Jeff.
I need to
Backfired.
EQ you a little bit.
That's what you get, actually.
I'm sorry.
I just want to
wanted
say
a
that
deeper voice.
I had no tone when I talked about Delmar. I was just stating facts. So you guys have interpreted that, not me. But speaking of microphones, this is like way more tense than it should be. Speaking of microphones, the mics we used last week at KB's offices were amazing.
For just one mortgage payment, we could all get those microphones.
You kid, man.
Those were like some super pro mics.
Premium.
So, as you know, we're going to have the Practically Pastoring Conference. We decided to not have the conference, but we decided to still gather together and dream a little bit. Hopefully, over the next several months, you'll be privy of those dreams. But one thing that we did do is have a live podcast, and we also hung out with some cool friends at Tim's Elder's house. And man, it actually, even more than that, it turned into like an ultimate awesome week. Like Tuesday, we had the live podcast. That was so fun. We were able to sit down with KB. If you haven't done so, listen to last week's episode. Super good.
We ate at La Teresita.
We ate at La Teresita. We ate some really good
Don't
Cuban
forget
food.
that.
Yeah, that was really great. And then that evening, I literally ate so much food. I think my stomach was pushing my lung closed because I couldn't breathe. There was so many wings and pizza and candied bacon and meatballs and all this other stuff. Tim, like, I was going to make a joke about him, like, stripping down and going to a hot tub. But actually, no one swam. We just all hung out.
I was ready. I had a bag.
Swimming.
I was going to borrow Jeff's other pair of shorts. I was prepared.
I was ready to turn on the hot tub. They gave me instructions on how to do so. No one did it. However, it might go down, and Andrew and I talked a little bit about this off the air. It might go down as like ministry highlight of the year. It was like it was that good.
Yeah, we were talking after, like, what? We shouldn't have canceled.
I'm kind of bummed, like, guys. I'm a little bit bummed that we canceled. I'm not even gonna lie.
We know some sponsorship stuff fell through, and the attendance was not what we wanted. But just there were 7, 8 guys sitting around a fire pit for 3 hours, and it was just about the best 3 hours of 2023 thus far.
Even though Andrew and I both had to still get all of our work done because we were both preaching.
Yeah, we weren't.
Yes,
we didn't take the weeks off like you guys were able to do. So when it's President's Day, Practically Pastoring Day, and then the next day we all went and played Topgolf with another ministry in the area. I had maybe 7 or 8 total hours in the office last week.
I will say it made youth group a little bit difficult last week.
That was tricky.
I was a little tired. Tons of fun, tons of great hang time, but I was a little bit tired.
Nice.
Yeah. But then the next day, you guys invited Jeff and I to be a part of the Tampa Bay pastors meeting with a Christian foster organization. Foster care organization, and it was so much fun because we went to Topgolf, and that was so fun. Andrew was in second place for like 20 minutes. That was cool.
I'm an athlete.
Andrew is absolutely. Hey guys, we got to hear somebody pray some really long prayers before we golf.
Oh my
Should we not
gosh.
talk about that?
We should.
They might. I don't want Tampa Bay pastors who were
Adora
there.
Hope, you guys nailed it. The event was awesome. This is not on you. It was so good. You guys did a phenomenal job.
We could
treating
just
area pastors.
read the text messages sent.
We really should.
We shouldn't have been texting while the guy was
All
praying.
during prayer.
Master class on A, reading a room, or B, self-awareness, or C, all of the above.
It was like a 38-minute prayer to close out the event.
With a room full of pastors.
Yeah,
Waiting to eat.
and he,
Waiting to eat.
Play golf.
If you're praying right before food is happening in a large group gathering, you got
not
15
efficient.
seconds max.
15 seconds. It's like we're eating.
Dude,
Amen.
this
That's all you got.
listen, if Major League Baseball can have a pitch clock, we can have a prayer clock, okay?
that is
15 seconds.
exactly right.
A prayer clock, 100% agree.
And
But,
Manny Machado up there did not.
And you better
like the
start-
block.
Much like a batter has to be ready facing the pitcher at 8 seconds left, the prayer better be starting to get to the and we give honor and glory to your name by 8 seconds left. You know what I'm saying? Halfway into
say
that
that-
15 seconds, you need to start wrapping it up.
I will say that praying. A pastor's gathering at Topgolf is one of the top 5 best places for a pastor's gathering. I mean, it's up there with what is that one youth ministry pastors organization does at Universal? What are they called?
That is YPS, Youth Pastor Summit. They give out universal tickets, which is also a ton
Which
of
is
fun.
why Tim and I are
That's
each running
top
our
tier.
student ministries right now. Not because we love the kids in our church. We just want an excuse to go to Universal
Nice.
Studios.
But
in
hosting
April.
that event at Top Golf, I talked to the Adore of Hope guys, and they said it was by far the best attended pastors luncheon they've
well,
ever done.
duh.
Yeah.
So if you want to,
100% win.
if you want to have a pastors gathering with other pastors, don't host it in your conference room at your church. Go to Topgolf, and you'll get like quadruple the participation.
Dude, can we talk about that
What
for a
that-
second? We get those emails a lot, right? Like we get that,
Yeah.
hey, come to I'm hosting a pastors roundtable.
This is a free resource that'll really help your ministry by buying my book.
It's always the local megachurch. I'm not trying to slam the local megachurch, and it's
Man,
always
we are
at their
salty today.
space. I'm just saying, I'm a little tired. I would much rather go to Top Golf than the megachurch fellowship hall, whatever they call it.
Yeah, except for that one. I mean, that one part is the only part that got me close to the line of being like, what am I doing here? But other than that, it
Well,
was pretty great.
The
We got some
fajitas
free
were great.
t-shirts.
The fajitas were great.
The shirts were
I
great.
got 2 T-shirts.
I got a copy of
super
David
soft.
Platt's Radical Together. We golfed. I got to see Jeff kick Andrew's ball off the ledge.
That was not cool.
That was awesome.
was-
Not cool.
You guys,
And
we need
then
to go golfing
in
together so I can pull
retaliation,
all the
I-
pranks.
I threw Jeff's ball and it landed in one of the targets.
all right. No one else was there. This is the dumb.
I'm just
conversation.
glad that I finally started hitting the ball decently because those first few strokes were horrendous.
It was a fun time, and this is why we do Practically Pastoring. We do this because we need friendship and we need to do ministry together. So with that being said, one of the things that we as a podcast, as a group of pastors, are thinking about Practically Pastoring of how we can kind of further this message that pastors shouldn't be doing ministry alone and pastors need other pastors is we have a Facebook group. And in our Facebook group, we have something like 800 folks in the group or something like that. The number hovers around 800. We want to get to 1,000. So if you are listening to this podcast and you're not in our Facebook group, the Practically Pastoring Facebook group, not page, but group, join our Facebook group. Create a Facebook account just to join this group. Facebook is a healthy website to have. But beyond that, if you have friends who are in ministry, who are pastors, youth pastors, kids pastors, senior pastors, associate pastors, campus pastors, whatever they are, invite them to the Facebook group. Let us get to 1,000 people. We want to get to 1,000. Help us make our Facebook group bigger. And then eventually we get to share some of the other ideas that we have. And I'm telling you, some of these ideas are pretty exciting. So join our Facebook group. With that being said, let's talk about an article that actually, you guys don't know this. Matt Coyne, he sent over this article. He's also, he has a podcast called Not the Worst Pastors. I want to plug them right now to go check out Not the Worst Pastors.
First of all, have you guys seen their Lent stuff they're doing?
Yeah, they're doing like a
Pretty great. Also, they got embroidered polo shirts with their podcast logo on them.
What are we doing?
I love it.
We gotta
What are we
step our
doing?
game
I know.
up.
Can we get free swag from them?
I know.
I'd wear one of those shirts.
Same.
I would.
We barely have a sticker, so we should get some embroidered. Shirts.
I'd pull an Andrew and wear that while I'm preaching with the wire in front of it.
That'd be cool. That'd be cool.
It would look good. It would look really.
It would.
You'd look approachable. It'd be great.
People be like, I wish I could read that logo, but
Check out Not the Worst Pastors on wherever you listen to podcasts. But he sent me this article. He actually sent it to me a couple of weeks ago, but it went to like my spam folder for some reason. It's an article from Carey Nieuwhof called 8 Church Trends in 2023. And so the link is in the show notes. You can read it. But here are the 8 church trends in 2023 that Carey Nieuwhof is predicting or seeing the church go, okay? The first one is this. The boomer church will decline and eventually disappear. 2, open pastors will reach an open generation, which is Gen Z. 3, the line between digital and in-person will blur even more. And he tells us that we should take note from Taylor Swift. 4, churches that embrace online ministry will start seeing results. 5, the purpose of the weekend sermon will shift from an attraction to an anchor. 6, content curation will matter as much as content creation. 7, the volunteer crisis will move from acute to chronic. And 8, pastoral burnout will stabilize as pastors embrace their new church. All right, there's a lot of bold predictions, a lot of bold trends that he's stating. I had to kind of help control the chaos of our group chat because you guys were already giving me commentary about what you thought about this article. So let me just say, what of these 8 trends stick out to you? What are your thoughts? Let's start with the first one because 2 of you, actually 3 of you, have a lot of boomers. I mean, all of us have boomers in our church. What do you think about this? The boomer church will decline and eventually disappear. What are your thoughts?
I mean, yeah, they're getting old. I don't know what. That's not a surprise.
Here's a trend that's coming. People over the age of 80 will not be around very much longer. Shocking trend. Wait, so you're saying we're not going to have 113-year-old church members? That's crazy, Carey Nieuwhof.
But it's also
Crazy.
pretty apparent that this was not written exclusively for Florida pastors.
No.
It's a very different climate and culture down here.
We had a new members class last night. We had 9 people come. 5 were over 70.
Nice.
So
Because that was one of his statistics, right? That they said boomers are not coming back to church, unlike millennials and Gen Xers are. Boomers are not coming back to church after COVID. You're saying because of Florida and because Governor DeSantis was the only smart person during the pandemic, boomers are
that's
coming
not
back to church.
quite what we're saying, but yes.
Practically what we're saying.
We're saying that Ron DeSantis is each of our associate pastors. He's an itinerant associate pastor at every church in Florida. No, I don't see my pop is 96 years old, and he gave up his driver's license, but watches his church on his compact Passario from 1984 every single week.
Wow.
So
Wow.
I don't know that. And again, maybe it's because we are in Florida, but we are seeing older people that we didn't see before in church now that we've stabilized, or people that were the maybe 2-time a month attenders are now 3 or 4-time a month attenders. So of all of these stats, and again, we're not going to be a boomer centric church for forever because that's just how aging works. But
True.
maybe we have active seniors at our churches.
We do have active seniors. Lakeview has nearly doubled. Actually, Lakeview has doubled in size since 2019, and the vast majority of those attending are of the boomer range. It's not even close. It's recently we
Carey.
started seeing millennials have made a comeback over the last 2 months at Lakeview, so that has been very, very cool to see. We've seen some millennials creeping in the doors. However, the boomer population is still very, very high at Lakeview, and they're also our most active volunteers. Like they are very, very active in the volunteer base, and that's probably because boomers are now retiring.
Yeah.
Which I don't know if that was talked about much here, but retiring boomers like to get stuff done. Like they like to work.
Empty nester
listen.
retirement is a huge win for the church.
Yeah.
Listen, I wish I could go back in time to talk to 20-year-old me who was frustrated at boomers for liking things the way they liked them. Because now I'm like, nobody shows up on time and does what they said they would do better than boomers. I'm sorry. You millennials and Gen Z, it's like, if you say you're going to be somewhere at a certain time, could you please do it? Because the boomers are putting us to shame with that.
So, I mean, it seems like, I feel like that first trend is kind of like a low-hanging fruit. Like, senior citizens are going to pass away, so therefore you should be mindful of that. Like, I think he's trying to say, like, that generation specifically maybe had attended church at a greater rate than later generations. But I do think, case in point, in Florida, boomers are not going to church. They're going to church. I think it's interesting, though, that, like, I think Carrie might are saying, like, hey, what are you doing to reach the next generation and be mindful of that? Which leads to the next question. The next line was open pastors.
I would say the financial implications that he made about the boomer church, I think, is right on, though.
Yeah.
Because, yes, eventually, people will eventually not come because they won't be alive anymore. And even if they bequeath something to the church, that it's not going to make up for the regular steady giving. And so churches need to be mindful of that.
I mean, the church that my campus is in, the church I was there before, it eventually died out. And it came from a lot of it stayed alive as long as it did because there was money and wills and grants from people passing away and stuff like that. And now, like, that wasn't sustainable. And when you have a congregation of 30 people and you're living off the money that was from people's estates have passed away in the past, that's not going to sustain you in the future. If anything, it'll get you a new paved parking lot or a new roof, but it won't necessarily help you survive.
It won't help you get nursery volunteers.
Yeah. Exactly. Nope. But speaking of the people in the nursery, he said open pastors will reach an open generation, Gen Z. What is like the face of Gen Z look like at your church? I know Andrew and Tim, you guys are back in student ministry helping with your students. I know I'm helping with my students. In fact, I was at a youth pastors kind of regional conference on Saturday talking about Gen Z, and one of the youth pastors was asking me, like, hey, I feel like Gen Z is the most confusing, difficult generation to reach right now. And when I heard him say that, my thought was, I bet every generation looked at that generation's students and said, yo, these kids, they don't want Jesus. It's hard to get them to church, all this other stuff. How are you reaching Gen Z at your church? How's that going for you guys? Are you a open pastor?
I think for us, being back in student ministry, it's kind of odd because Gen Z is now aging out of student ministry. So I was a student pastor to Gen Z. Gen Z are now the young adults. And I don't know that the church has done a phenomenal job here because we have gotten so age specific with all of our programming. A lot of our Gen Z are asking, hey, what's next? I'm like, well, this is it. Like, I was your youth pastor. Come to church on Sunday. Yeah, but what's like for my age group? Like, this is it.
Where's the pizza?
Right.
Right. There's no cornhole or can jam for Sunday morning?
There should be. Why wouldn't there be?
I mean, Tim, you've got the space for it if
I was
anybody.
going to say, if anyone could pull it off, Lakeview could definitely do it.
Bocce tournament every Sunday. Hey, guys, church is starting a few minutes late this morning, but be sure to check out the finals of the spike ball. And once we crown a new champ of the week, we're going to get started with worship.
Yeah, as soon as Tim and his opponent figure out the sudden death overtime and can jam, we'll get going.
Well, you've got to declare a winner. You can't just end it.
How
can't.
Great was can jam?
Can jam is a phenomenal sport.
I don't know what you mean was. It is great.
So you're saying, because I feel like this was an issue when we were youth pastors.
It was.
And even when we were youth, of like, okay, you have great youth ministries, and then if you go to a decent university with a decent campus ministry, you have, again, another age-specific ministry. And my biggest pushback to Campus Crusades, navigators, those campus ministries was you pull them away from the church. I'm not saying this is a blanket statement. I'm broad brushing here. They've pulled them away from the church to be a part of like a campus crusade for 3 or 4 days a week in really good community and Bible study. But now when they graduate, they feel like orphans because they don't have a community, and they don't, and churches aren't really doing a good job of true intergenerational church.
Yeah, I
right?
think it's
like,
more. It's not that they don't have a community; it's that they don't know how to relate to a community who isn't like 2 years, within 2 years of their own age. Yeah, it's like you go from having everybody within a year or two of you to having like 5 decades of space between you and the oldest people in your church, who are also disappearing, by the way.
Right. So how do we better integrate? How do we better integrate the current generation into the life and body of the church, and not just say, "Hey, once you're at a youth group, come on over on Sunday mornings"? Like I don't think that particular method works all that well. It didn't.
To me,
work well
that's
for
one of the most
millennials.
compelling arguments for things like missional communities, as opposed to programs. And it's one of the things that I'm like, we have a youth group at my church right now, and it's going great, and the people that are running it doing a fantastic job. But that's one of the things that makes me nervous. Is like, are we going back to that model of like siloed everything? We have our kids in with us during Sundays, so that's a little bit of it. But I think it's a great question, Tim. Like, what are we doing beyond just like integrating Sundays? As important as that is, to getting them to have real relationships. I can't remember where the study was, but I saw a sociology study that said even particularly with young girls, like relationships with older people who are not their biological family is super important for their development and their ability to attach to healthy relationships. And it's like, man, the church that's what it is. The church is like, that's built into it in a healthy church. So
I understand from a discipleship standpoint the place for student ministries and children's ministries. I do get, like, I've said this for years since I graduated Bible college, and it was like a young unknowledgeable youth pastor, and since I've grown, I've always have been concerned with the concept of student ministries that pull students out of the Sunday morning service, because I think students can handle the Sunday morning services, but I have really good friends who have youth groups that meet in, and they use it as like it's mostly a pragmatic issue. You got to get students out so there's more butts for adults that actually give to the offering, right?
Hopefully more seats, not more butts.
That's true. But I do think that this might be an indictment. It talked about how boomers were the people who bought into the mega church models back when it was starting. And I wonder if it's not so much the mega church model that they bought into, but even the broader of like overly programmatic churches where there is a, hot rods and pancake men's breakfasts and women's teas and that's just gender.
it was all affinity stuff.
It's all affinity and age based.
Yeah.
So you've segregated people in so many different kind of affinity groups that maybe there is good discipleship and intentional community there, but like we've now created so much segmentation that like the Sunday morning just feels like a bunch of pockets of individuals as opposed to a true church community. So like, as much as I don't like the book Simple Church, one thing it does prevent against is the concept of it affords you the opportunity to have true intergenerational churches when you don't have overly programmatic affinity groups. Andrew, what are your thoughts?
We were going through this this past week. We have 6 generations at least in our worship service every single Sunday. So I guess Gen Alpha is the generation behind Gen Z, Millennials, Gen X, Boomers, and then the silent generation. And we try to find roles for everybody to play. So the announcements every Sunday, I have a 7-year-old girl help me make announcements every week. And, the thing is the old people will be way more gracious towards a kid stepping up and playing a role in church. If I'm doing announcements and I'm fumbling or whatever, it's not cute. If she is, they're going to remember that announcement way better, and it's the cutest thing ever. We have in our praise team, we will regularly have 2 keyboard players, which I don't know why it's necessary to have keyboard players, but one of them is 84 and one of them is a teenager. And so we kind of say how many different roles can different people play, especially upfront kind of roles.
Different.
Good.
It's a very different model.
Yes.
When it comes to putting people on stage than, say, what we've seen from certain popular churches out there who make it a point to have good-looking people of different color on the stage. You know what I mean? Like they're very intentional with who they put on stage, not necessarily of a certain age range, because they typically all look to be about the same age.
About 26 to make announcements, about 42 to preach.
So I'm saying your approach is slightly different than that.
Little bit.
Could that fit in different size churches?
I will
think
say,
so.
I will say, I saw one time I visited Saddleback Church on a Sunday, and they just casually had Lauren Daigle guest leading, and I thought that was crazy. But that's not even the part.
Fellowshipped. What?
Oh, that's neither here nor there.
That's another ridiculous.
He didn't say Lauren Daigle was preaching, dude. Chill out.
But you know what I saw that blew me away, and to this day, like I want to figure out how to have this here. They had a literal 12-year-old boy on stage up front singing. And the fact that, and what I thought was fascinating about that was like they had a middle school boy singing in the main worship service, and that kind of flies in the face of what you guys just described as like the 20, early 30s, beautiful looking people are the only people who should be on stage. It's like some churches, they have, the 16-year-old kid on drums out of necessity because they don't have drummers. But
Bro,
the
I am attacked. Chill out with that.
I was that 16-year-old
Exactly
drummer
what I
too.
have.
But some people, but what if you intentionally said like, okay, there's a middle schooler who's on the praise and worship team in the youth group, like instead of saying, hey, let's wait till they graduate high school to get him in the worship service, like what if we intentionally make a statement of we are a church that has both middle schoolers singing and the 60-year-old guy playing bass, like and having that beautiful diversity in more
with
of an
the
intention.
full-on headphones.
Okay, are you watching Randy's live stream? Would you stop it?
Yeah, no, we're not wearing in-ears for the bass player. We want-
That's what my bass player does every week.
Those like
Now
silver
I
gray
get that.
big headphones. I love it. Yeah. That's funny. There he is. Yeah, it looks just like that. If you're not watching the video,
and
you're
it's
missing
up around
out.
his nipples. The bases.
Oh,
Why,
my
why have your
goodness.
bass hang low when you can, just wear it
Okay.
on your sternum?
Andrew's
Let's
never
move on.
played an instrument in his life.
I know he's.
That's not true. I played trumpet.
That's what.
You seem like a trumpet player.
Hey, so I think we talked about this a couple times in the podcast when we first went digital. All of our, I thought that was a fascinating statistic that before the pandemic, they were. What is? Oh my gosh, you guys are not watching the video. You're missing out. Andrew is. You don't have to do it again. This is an audio format. This is so dumb. Anyways, if you guys remember when we first entered the pandemic, we were looking into. I can't. Oh my goodness! When we first entered the pandemic,
I think it might be time for me to start getting some meds because I've known I've had ADD my entire life, but today is the day
Bro.
that I can't.
But where's the line between ADD and just immaturity?
again, if you're only listening to the audio format, this podcast is going to get like a 1-star review.
Guaranteed,
Please
if you're
don't 1-star
listening,
review.
if you're listening, even just to the audio format, you are smiling though, because you can't help it when you hear people laughing like that.
That's true. Okay, one thing the article said is like something like 20-something% were streaming their services online, and because of the pandemic, now it's like in the 90s. 90% of churches are streaming, which is a crazy jump, right? Crazy jump. The article talks about the line between digital and in person, and those who are embracing online ministry will be the ones succeeding in the future. So my question to you is there merit, or is do you think Carey Nieuwhof is just like a victim of the times, of like that everyone's doing it, everyone should be doing it? Or is there something like, whenever I see stats like this, like trends of the church, I always kind of like, I'm a little cynical because I'm like, the church of Jesus Christ is going to survive. not based on trends of the current culture, but like it's going to survive because of the gospel, and it's going to flourish because of that too. But like, I don't know. Where are you guys with your digital ministry currently? Where are you guys with your streaming? Are you just basically just having a format for those who can't come out to your church, or are you being intentional of developing a digital ministry?
I mean, we stream our service, but we could do it better. We could do an online ministry better than what we're doing. But I think the biggest question I have in response to what you said, like, do you think he's right? I think it depends on a lot of assumptions about what you think success in the church is. You know, only these churches will be successful. What do you mean by that? I'm going to assume, I think pretty safely, that he mostly means like numerical growth, which is good, but it's not the only thing in the bucket of success. And I think, you know, Andrew, you probably relate to this the most, but especially in a smaller church, I just am not going to see astronomical growth fast. I'm going to hopefully see some slow, steady growth, but, you know, in a smaller church, success is not measured just by like numerical growth. It's also measured in like long-term relational discipleship as well. So if that's the case, then, I mean, my Sunday morning live stream really doesn't affect that very much. Although I still want it to be better than it is.
I think it's one of those, I don't want to say necessary evil. It's just not my favorite thing in the world, but I reach out to our first-timers every single week, and it is by far, without a doubt, the most popular response. We've been watching online for X amount of weeks. We've been watching online for 6 months, and I had one that said we've been watching online for 2 years. We finally came in person. So, like, it's not going away. It probably shouldn't go away. It should never replace what's happening in person on Sundays, but we should not neglect what's happening online. I think we roughly have 40 to 60 on a Sunday morning online. And it's hard to tell that number because no one watches by themselves. Usually they're with somebody. So, I don't really know how many are watching online. But I know that people are there. So when the live stream mix sounds terrible, I feel terrible. When I get home on a Sunday afternoon and I review the live stream, I'm like, like what are we like? This is what everyone. It sounded so much better in person. You know, it's tough.
In the 90s and in the early 2000s, everyone was saying, "Oh, your website is the new lobby of the church.
It's the front door."
People are going to visit your website before they ever come. I don't check our website traffic that much. But our website traffic is less than a third of what our Facebook traffic is.
For sure.
And our Facebook traffic is mostly people tuning in to our live stream. So,
and you did say your church is a lot of boomers, and I'm not being funny, but that is a correlation to Facebook.
Well, that's why, and we're having to switch
100%
from Facebook to YouTube because Facebook they're killing the support for the Facebook Watch app.
Yeah.
And that is what we use to play the sermon or to play the service in the nursery. And so I'm kind of excited because we have no choice now but to say, hey, sorry, boomers, we're going to have to be doing YouTube instead of Facebook. We'll probably actually do restream and do both. But
you could still like post the link to the YouTube on the Facebook.
Yeah.
So that way people can see it in their notifications or whatever.
It's hard to read the Taylor Swift stats. As a father of a 13-year-old who desperately wants to be at the Eras Tour, and I was unable to secure tickets.
And a close personal friend of mine. Come on, like, it's a little bit offensive to say that Emily's more of a Swiftie than I am.
Look, you don't like in-person concerts. You've told me this. My family, we're a big fan. So we were unable to secure tickets. So if you're listening, you're watching, and you've got tickets to the Eras Tour, we will travel. Love to be in Tampa. But last year we went to Denver, Colorado to see Olivia Rodrigo. So yes, we will travel if we can secure tickets. That's all I'm going to say.
Okay. Another thing he said is the purpose of the weekend sermon will shift from an attraction to an anchor.
And then he said your sermons aren't that good and everyone else's are way better than yours. I read that line. It was very
That's what I heard too.
And accurate. Hurtful but accurate.
Also true.
Yeah.
Yeah, he said. So what do you guys think about that?
Well, I agree with him, which is why I never thought the sermon was the attractional thing anyway. So, I mean, that again, I think it's like I'm on the same planet but in a different world as far as like what I think the church's purpose is. I don't think the Sunday morning service is like this, like the front door. I haven't thought that for a long time, but I definitely don't think it now.
I think it's definitely like there is a segment, a large majority segment of evangelical culture that the main communicator and that message is like the biggest in their minds, the biggest portion of a person's discipleship, development, and growth. And historically and biblically, that's not the case, right?
Right.
And so with that said, it's, if anything, that shift is a good thing. It's just that us as pastors need to be on board with that, and that should be reflected in where our priorities are, right? Like I think the days of a pastor spending 45 hours, not 45 hours, it's like a majority of their week in sermon prep,
8 hours or less,
needs to. It should be. I think. Like, we read it as a group. Like that book, 8 hours or less, I think helps you reprioritize your preaching prep, so that you can actually do the more important part of your ministry, which is the pastoral care and whether it's the one-on-one discipleship or even the group discipleship. That the preaching. I love you. One of you guys framed it this way, and it actually has helped me reframe my preaching to lower the pressure. I think one of you guys said, when you go to preach, you're just trying to hit a single. You don't have to hit a home run every time. And when I started thinking about that, like the pressure of preaching consistently and thinking that you have to be whatever big, great preacher you think exists in this country, like, would be overwhelming and daunting. But if you remember, your job is to hit a single, because your job is just to help move the needle a little bit for the people in your congregation to conform more to the image of Christ and to understand the scriptures better. But the deep work, the deep discipleship work, is often going to happen either in your office, or when you go to the hospital, or when you are in the grocery store and someone comes up to you. Like, that's where the deeper, like, more meaningful long-term stuff is going to happen. A good sermon is going to have a quote that might last for the week, but the other stuff is going to be longer. I actually think this is probably the best trend of the 8 trends here. So, any other thoughts about the sermon?
I would say you have to be careful here, because if you're consistently preaching bad sermons, people will leave your church.
Oh, yeah.
Like, there's just, you could have the greatest kids ministry in the world, but if your sermons constantly suck because you're not putting time and prep into them, people aren't going to come back. Like, I think there's a both and here. You should be prepping. You should be faithfully preaching the word, but it shouldn't be the main attraction. It doesn't mean you can be like, oh, I'm good. I can just get up there and kind of wing it this week. No.
I can't say that I know any churches where people are being discipled where the main communicator is a bad preacher.
I totally agree. Like,
and he might be
100%.
Average,
but not
which,
bad.
The majority of us are, and then have a good sermon here and there. But I don't know any churches that are really making disciples and doing, cool kingdom things where the main person communicating is bad at it. Like, I think, I agree with you.
I think there's it's a bell curve, right? Like, there's the top 10%, there's the bottom 10%, and then there's the 80% that are all kind of right there in the middle, and they're a whole lot closer together than you think. But still, the focus of church should not be a half an hour a week. There's a reason that when you read through the New Testament, they talk a whole lot more about the table than they do about the sermon. And Jeff, that's why I love that you guys do communion each and every week, because the focus of the church is going to be the spiritual formation that happens around tables. It happens knee to knee way more than shoulder to shoulder.
You should write a book, Andrew. That's a good byline. Real ministry, knee to knee, not shoulder to shoulder. That's cute. I
think you're cute too.
I appreciate it. Now this was like one of the disturbing ones, like kind of the scary ones. The volunteer crisis will move from acute to chronic. Does that freak you guys out? Is that because all the boomers are dying and they're not serving? What are your thoughts about that?
Well, I think it's the boomers are going to be gone and not serving. And in my church, that mostly means in leadership roles. But then what we're finding with like the younger ones is that there is kind of a cultural attitude of like, I don't want to have to serve with my own kids. So you need to get somebody in here to like watch my kids and do my youth, do the youth group for my kids and stuff so that I don't have to do that stuff. So that's worrying to me because it's like, especially again in a smaller church, is like, well, the parents of small kids are the ones who could be with the small kids. So, I don't know who else you want to come in here and do this. We're not paying somebody to do it. to like babysit. So that I think that will be a challenge. And then, it's like when I think of the boomers in my church who are serving really well, most of them are serving in some kind of like role where it's not like, they're not serving behind a soundboard or necessarily like in a nursery. They're like the treasurer, or they're serving by like leading on a board or something. So if you lose that, then then you start to have to replace that with the younger generation. And right now, none of them are really seem interested in doing those kind of roles. So yeah, that's a concern for sure.
It's a concern, but it also has to be a very intentional culture shift. Andrew and I cover this at our membership classes, respectively. We have 2 different membership classes. We pastor 2 different churches, but we we
share curriculum.
We use the same curriculum, and we are very clear about, hey, if you are considering joining the mission and vision of Lakeview Church, serving is not optional. Like it is expected. And I like this line here: wise church leaders will stop making the volunteer ask about what they want from the volunteers and make it about what they want for them. So we are very clear about what we want for our volunteers, and that is for them to get invested and plugged into the life and mission vision of Lakeview Church. Andrew just got a stamp with his church logo on it. He just stamped my arm.
Oh, dude, I need that. That sounds really cool.
It's actually very cool.
We put it on coffee cups. It was super dope.
It's very
Nice.
cool.
You should stamp every person that comes in your church, and maybe they'll
On the forehead.
Right on the forehead.
On the
Yeah,
forehead.
We did it for Ash Wednesday. It was just
Ooh,
like
nice.
Instead of ashes, you get stamped with the church logo.
Yeah, that's a lot of theological problems.
Let me ask you this question, and we'll wrap up the show. Do you see any trends that is not mentioned here? Anything that you are expectant and encouraged by, or nervous about the future of the church, or maybe just your church? What do you got?
I think there are a lot of people that are going to treat churches like a buffet. And by that, I mean, they're going to go to one church Sunday morning. They're going to go to another church for their small group. Their kids are going to do Awana or whatever kids program at another church.
Accurate.
And like most of these trends that Carrie is bringing up, I don't think we're supposed to argue the scientific data. I think it's a how do we function in light of this trend that he's bringing up. And I think the idea of people doing church at 2, 3, 4 different churches as a family is something that's happening. Whether or not we agree that it should be happening, it's happening. And so we need to figure out how we are going to still disciple our people that might only be part-time our people.
It used to bother me when someone was like, yeah, we were at this Youth Cover Wednesday. We came to Lakeview on Sunday. And now it's like, cool. What happened over there? Like, I get that every week. We went to, someone on our worship team was like, hey, we were at the chapel last Saturday night. And it was really cool. They did this. I'm like, that's awesome. Like, it really doesn't bother me as much anymore. But growing up, it was almost like, you didn't, like, no. Like,
How dare you?
yeah, it was shameful. It was,
How do
you
you-
were called
how-
a church whore.
How do you guys handle though? Like there is a very large prosperity gospel church in Tampa that it's like there's like legit false teaching happening from that church particularly. How do you feel when you hear about congregants saying like, "Hey, I went to Bible study at this church," or "I went to a conference at that church," and like I agree with you, Tim. Like when people tell me they're a part of a Bible study at a different church, like for the most part, these churches are like, I call them brothers in Christ. We're co-laboring into the gospel for the city, and I don't actually know.
As
like,
long as you
names.
tithe here, you can go to small group wherever you want.
Yeah, baby.
But like I don't know the names of like any specific whack churches in Milwaukee because I just literally don't know all the theology of all these churches. But like Tampa in particular has some very vocally whack churches, if I can use that phrase, as someone from Tampa. Like, I mean, this even goes to the idea of like someone reading a book that like is weird. Like, how do you feel necessary to get to correct them? How do you go about correcting them? Has there been a situation where you've been in that? I would love to hear what your thoughts are from any of you guys.
I think the biggest thing, like if people are going to multiple places, totally fine. Until it's now, if they're a non-member, I mean, there's not much to say. But if they're a member, as soon as it starts to like dip into their ability to be a good member in good standing at their home, at their whatever they're saying is their home church, then I think it's a conversation. It's a little bit like, I mean, I'm sure Tim and Andrew, you guys hang out a lot together, but if you started hanging out so much that you started neglecting your families, it'd start to be a problem. So I think it's kind of a similar thing. Like if you want to hang out with some friends, quote unquote, as a friend church, fantastic, have friends. But if you start abandoning your own family because you're at a bunch of different places, then maybe there needs to be a conversation. It's just never going to be about, on the other side of it is like it can't never be about guilt, though, and like shame. It has to be about even a thing like we said for volunteering. This is about what we want for you. This isn't about what we want from you. And we think membership and being committed to one place has a lot of benefit for you, even in its limitations.
Sometimes Tim spends so much time with his family that he neglects me. And
It's true.
Good job, Tim.
He gets very hurt.
my feelings get hurt sometimes.
But Jeff, to your point, we do have different expectations on members than we do on church attenders, and we make that very, very clear in membership class. As an attender, we don't have very strict expectations, but as a member, we do expect you to get plugged in.
But you don't get the secret handshake. I mean, that's it.
And you don't get the robe. Like, you're not getting the robe as an attender. If you want the robe, you got to sign up. Also, someone attempted to sign their membership covenant contract in blood at Lakeview last week. Turns out it wasn't blood. It was the pasta sauce from the lasagna.
Okay.
It was very, very funny, though.
Hey,
Very
Frank,
funny.
you remember the time we signed the doctrinal statement that all the professors at Trinity signed, and we wrote like Barack Obama and Porky Pig on it?
Yeah, it was like the first Sunday.
Shenanigans of the worship team at a small Bible college.
It was the first chapel of the year, and
Convocation.
all the staff signed the paper, and they just left it, the document.
They left it in
podium.
the pulpit thing, yeah.
And so we were just like going through it, and we're like, this feels like a very important document.
Yeah, and this is when all of us are saying thanks, Obama, to each other. So.
Yeah,
That makes me feel so old because I
real.
was several years into seminary when Obama was elected.
Well, I should have been several years into seminary, so don't feel that old.
Thank you.
I
That
just
makes me
was a
feel
bad
better.
student.
yeah, we signed it. That's really funny. I like what you guys said. I think there's a reality that like the way people are perceiving church is changing. I do think I want to call people to more, not because I feel like they should do more, but like we should be expecting things from people who are committing to a church. And I think I don't want to give into the comfort mentality that our world gives our people, because I think that's actually deforming us to becoming lazier and also unhealthy. And the church does call people to have responsibility to the people who they call their church family. But I also think that if there is a specific Bible study that another church is having that we aren't having, that's beneficial, I think there's definitely a capacity for them to participate. Like you say, if they're a friend church, go hang out with your friends, but don't neglect your family. The hard thing I think that I've been finding, and maybe this is just a very nuanced thing for Milwaukee and my church, is having people see the benefits of membership and having people commit to membership. Because so many churches, but also our culture has a low view of membership, and are also very leery of membership. Does that make sense? Like we want to sign up for
I think it's mostly the
contracts.
leery thing. Like that's what I've run into recently. Is people are leery of like their ideas of bad authority.
I mean, people don't commit to cell phone plans or cable packages that you can't just cancel after 1 month. Or marriage, yeah.
Let's just cohabitate, dude.
Yeah, and I think that I think there's a message that needs to be preached. This is gonna be like very gray right now, but like Christ commits to us, and therefore we should have some sort of commitment to the church. If that makes sense, without the legalism, without the what's the word you use, Jeff? The guilt and the shame. None of that. But there's a sense of commitment that we should call people to. And I think that's probably one of the biggest challenges right now with millennials and Gen Z, where boomers got it, right? Like boomers, that's why you hear about boomers who are faithful to a church for, there's wings of churches, buildings, classrooms named after these boomers because they've committed to a church for 40, 50 years. I hope that could be said by some millennials and Gen Zers, right? So, anyways, any other thoughts before we wrap up this episode? Nothing from, just keep going at Chick-fil-A. Hey, if you have enjoyed this show, can you do me a favor? Can you give us a 5-star review? Let us know what you like about it. Also, join our Facebook group. We want to get to 1,000. Invite someone there, someone you know, to that Facebook group. And be on the lookout, man. This last week, we had some really good conversations about the future, particularly pastoring. Live in-person events are not going away, but we have some really fun stuff to share with you guys. So keep connected with us on Facebook and Instagram. Feel free to reach out to us if you need anything. With that being said, I'm Frank Gill.
I'm Jeff Simpson.
We're Andrew Larson.
And I'm Timothy Miller.
That would be collectively
No,
one
we
unit
miss you.
there.
This is Practically Pastoring. Bye.
Frank, you should say bye, buddies.
Thanks for listening. Get connected to other pastors by joining the Practically Pastoring Facebook group, where we get to share ideas and make each other better.
Bye, buddies.